our today's topic related to the e-invoicing. So friends, before discussing e-invoicing, just keep in mind that whenever there is we start with the e-invoicing, the question arises, why e-invoicing required? Because you may aware that we are nowadays, if we compare the earlier era and nowadays, we are reporting many of the transaction to the government portal. So each and every transaction is now online. Like in GSTR, we are giving GSTR1, we are giving the sales. In GSTR2, we reflecting the invoices related to the our supplier, vendor, or even there is a 3B. So everything is online. Then why e-invoicing is required, or new requirement of e-invoicing? So friends, from last few days, you may had heard the news regarding the fake invoices. Almost 500 cases are launched related to the invoices or the fake invoices in last couple of few days, let's say 1 week or 2 weeks. So there are many instances wherein fake invoices are getting generated, and hence that transactions government want to eliminate, or that risk of generation of the fake invoices government intend to mitigate. And then one of the steps taken can be said that the e-invoicing. So on the basis of e-invoicing, government would get the real-time data regarding the invoices you had generated. So afterwards, once you generated the invoicing, you should not make any of the adjustment. So this could be the objective of the e-invoicing. Even we had captured all this related to the whatever the fake invoicing details. We had written an article, so you can refer that article also related to the fake invoicing. So this can be the objective. But question arises whether this objective is going to be satisfied on account of implementation of e-invoicing. So friends, now the e-invoicing is applicable to only specified entities, so not for the all entities. And unless and until it made applicable to all entities, there one can say that the full objective of the government to mitigate the risk of fake invoicing may not be satisfied. But definitely this is the way, or this is the path to curb the transaction related to the fake invoicing. So this is the objective. In today's sessions, we are mainly focusing on the what is the e-invoicing. So basic concept of the e-invoicing. So we are not going to discuss about the online portal, because now in the era of the social media, everyone knows about the Facebook or the LinkedIn, or everyone using the website. So it's a one kind of the website, and if you search, you can get many of the things. So we are not going to discuss about the online. But yes, we are going to discuss the modes of the generation of the e-invoicing. So may not be discussing the online portal, or you can discuss separately with us whenever there is a query related to the online portal. But today we are focusing on the e-invoicing concept. So what applicability of the e-invoicing? If e-invoicing becomes applicable, what are the transactions going to covered under the e-invoicing? Then what is the methodology for as an organization, how you are going to generate the e-invoicing? So the methodology or process for generation of the e-invoicing we are going to discuss. Then afterwards, key FAQ. So some of the participants had shared some of the queries which we are going to discuss, and then some of the challenges you are going to face, or you may face during the implementation or after implementation, that we are going to discuss. And as a supplier, or as a taxpayer, what is the preparedness you require at this stage? That also we are going to discuss. And at the last session, we are going to interact one-to-one for the purpose of question answer session. So this is our today's topic discussion, or today's path of the session. So let's start with our detailed session. So first, applicability of e-invoicing. So many of the participants had joined. You may had in mind whether e-invoicing is applicable to me or not. So as far as applicability is concerned, whether e-invoicing is applicable to you or not. So from 1st October, you know that you are aware that the e-invoicing is already made mandatory for the taxpayer who are having a turnover above 500 crore. Then from 1st December, they are saying that the the taxpayer who are having a turnover above 500 crore, they are required to generate the QR code for the B2C invoices. So for the B2C invoices now, from 1st December, they could require to generate the QR code. And from 1st January 2021, e-invoicing is made mandatory. So notification is already issued and invoicing is made mandatory for the businesses having the turnover more than 100 crore. So if your turnover is more than 100 crore, then definitely from 1st January 2021, the e-invoicing is applicable to your company. Now the question arises that for which year you have to check the 100 crore. So if you refer the notification 70 by 2020, read with 13 notification, it says that you have to check the turnover for the last 3 years or from the 17-18. So when GST law was introduced, so you have to check the turnover of the 3 years in any 1 year or in any of the year from 17-18. If your turnover has crossed 100 crore, then e-invoicing is applicable. So now this you got to know. Now the third question could be in mind that what is the turnover? So whether my exempt turnover is going to be included for computation of 100 crore, whether I have to compute for my all businesses. So for this, the question or for this question, you have to refer the definition of aggregate turnover. So term used is aggregate turnover, and aggregate turnover is defined under section 2.6. So as far as aggregate turnover is concerned, aggregate turnover includes the exempt supply. So even you are supplying the exempt goods and some of the taxable goods for the purpose of computing of the 100 crore, or whether you have entity or your company has crossed the 100 crore that you require to compute, then you have to include the exempt supply. Also the export of goods, interstate supply, and second and most important that the 100 crore limit has to be checked PAN level. So if you are having a presence in different state and you are having a 2 or 3 GSTN for under the one PAN, then you have to check the 100 crore limit for the PAN level. That is, you have to club the turnover of all your GSTN for the checking. The once you crosses the 100 crore turnover PAN level, then for all your branches or for all your GSTN, this e-invoicing concept is made applicable. I think everyone is now clear about the applicability, or you can at least track your applicability, whether your company is getting covered under the parameter of the e-invoicing from 1st January or not. So compute 100 crore accordingly for the last 3 years. Any 1 year, if you are crossing the 100 crore, then you are eligible or you are required to generate the invoicing from 1st January, and that is mandatory. Now, second, there are some entities which had made the exempted. So these entities are exempted by way of notification. Which are that entities? All other entities are liable to invoicing. Only these entities are exempt. That are SEZ unit. So SEZ unit has exempted, but not the SEZ developer. So SEZ developer has to generate the e-invoicing, but SEZ unit is exempted. Insurer, banking company, financial institution, NBFC, GTA, passenger, administrator, multiplex. So these are the entities which are exempted to generate the e-invoicing. Second key aspect about this is that it is clarified that the exemption given is not entity wise. So it's a exemption given is not for the entity but for the business. So what is means by that? For the business means if you are a banking company and you are under exemption category and you are providing the banking services, then definitely you are not required to generate the e-invoicing. But if you are selling the scrap or selling the goods which is taxable in normal course of, and it is not normal course of the banking business, then even you are a bank, then you are required to generate the e-invoicing. So the exemption given is the core business and not core entity. So this is the exemption. Now, once you got you covered under, now you got that you had covered under the e-invoicing. Then what are the legal provision and what are the care you should take once you get covered under the e-invoicing? So first, the tax invoice. If you refer section 31, it says that the tax invoice should be issued in the manner prescribed. And the manner is prescribed under Rule 48, which is to be on electronic portal. So if you refer 48.5, it said that the invoice is not, if you had not issued the invoice in the manner prescribed, that is whatever the e-invoicing related manner, then that invoice is not treated as an invoice for the purpose of GST law. That means if you had not satisfied the criteria related to e-invoicing, then your invoice is not valid as per the GST law from 1st January, one can say. Second, related to the section 16. If you refer to section 16, it says that the my voice is breaking. So if you refer the section 16, then condition for availment of input tax credit, it says that the input tax credit is available only if you had received or in possession of the proper tax invoice. So as a recipient also, you have to ensure that your vendor, if he crosses 100 crores, then he has issued the e-invoicing, proper e-invoicing with QR code. So if you see, this section is relevant to whom? So definitely whoever having a turnover more than 500 crore, e-invoicing is already implemented to them, but they are facing many of the challenges. Like they are facing the challenge of automation, they are facing the implementation challenges. There are many challenges nowadays they are facing, and hence they should improve that in days to come, so that the process should be smoothened in days to come. Second, the turnover having 100 crore, they should start preparing for the implementation of the e-invoicing. And all other taxpayer, even the e-invoicing is not applicable, at least they have to ensure that the whatever invoice they had received are proper. So if they had received or they had received the goods or services from the entities who had crossed the turnover of 100 crore, then they should track that they had issued the invoice with proper QR code, so that the eligibility of input tax credit has not questioned afterwards. So this is as a recipient, your responsibility. So for everyone, one can say that there is a technology change, and not for only the supplier. As a recipient, you have to prepare for the e-invoicing from now, and whether your vendor is prepared, or you have to check whether your vendor is prepared or not. So friends, this is about the applicability. Once e-invoicing is applicable, the second question may come in mind that when I require to generate the e-invoicing and which transaction of mine are covered under the e-invoicing. So e-invoicing as a supplier. So keep in mind that the e-invoicing is only applicable to supplier or the seller. As a recipient, you're not required to generate the invoicing. Only for the purpose of supply of the goods and services as a supplier, e-invoicing is applicable. Along with the supplier, e-commerce operator can also allowed to generate the e-invoicing. So e-commerce operator is also allowed for the generation of the e-invoicing. Then document for which e-invoicing is required to be generated is the tax invoice. So if you are issuing a tax invoice, then e-invoicing is applicable. Debit note and credit note. So for as a supplier, if you are issuing the debit note, as a supplier, if you are issuing the credit note, then for debit note, credit note also e-invoicing is required to generate it. Or one can say that the debit note or credit note, you have to report to the government portal. Then document for which e-invoicing is not applicable, means there are certain documents in GST law which are required to be raised under the GST rules and GST law. But for that purpose, you are not required to report that document to the government portal, or for that purpose, e-invoicing is not applicable. Which are that document? Bill of supply. You may aware that the bill of supply is required to be raised under the GST law for the exempt supplies. So one can say that the e-invoicing is not applicable to bill of supply, and hence e-invoicing is not applicable to exempt supply. So it's not required to generate. Then for refund voucher, e-invoicing not applicable. For self-invoices is e-invoicing. So self-invoice is required to be generated for the revert charge, purpose. So for RCM, you are generating the self invoices, but for that purpose, e-invoicing is not applicable. For receipt voucher, payment voucher, and ISD invoices, e-invoicing is not applicable. So these are the documents you should issue under the GST law, but it is not required to generate the QR code, or e-invoicing is not applicable to these documents. Second, for easy understanding, keep in mind whenever there is a forward charge and you are issuing the tax invoice, credit note or debit note, you have to generate the e-invoicing, and invoicing is not applicable for the reverse charge. But as a GTA, you are providing the GTA services and your recipient is required to pay the GST. Then in that case, for the forward charge, as a supplier, you have to generate the e-invoicing. So just from simplification, if there is a forward charge, tax invoice applicable, debit note applicable, credit note applicable, then e-invoicing is required. Second, B2B covered for the e-invoicing. So whenever there is a B2B transaction, e-invoicing is applicable. B2G, that is whenever there is a government supply and government is registered under the GST, then e-invoicing is applicable. For export invoices also, invoicing has made applicable by way of notification. So if you are engaged in the export, then for the purpose of export invoices also, you have to generate the e-invoicing. Now B2B is applicable, but what about the B2C? So as discussed earlier, for the B2C transaction, QR code is applicable, but QR code is not yet implemented. And it is going to be implemented for the purpose of taxpayer who are having a 500 crore and more turnover from 1st December. But till now, it is not implemented. And for 100 crore, maybe it's implemented afterwards. So for B2C invoices, QR code is applicable and not e-invoicing. So this is about the transaction applicable. So once e-invoicing is applicable, which transactions or what are the transactions which are going to be covered for the purpose of e-invoice generation. Now friends, regarding the process, now you got to know your applicability, you are applicable, your company is liable to generate the invoicing. Now you got to know the what are the transactions for which transaction you have to generate the invoicing. Now how you are going to generate the invoicing once it is applicable for your transaction. So first of all, you have to check the enablement on the e-invoicing portal. So site is http einvoice1gst.gov.in. In that, there is a tab called as others. In that, you can check the enablement. So for your GSTN number, whether e-invoicing portal is enabled. As far as government guidelines are issued, they are saying that the e-invoicing portal is or sandbox testing is available to everyone now, irrespective of the turnover. But before going through, you check whether for your GSTN, whether its portal is enabled or not. Then you have to take the registration. For the purpose of registration, there are two options available. If you are supplying the goods and you are having a eBay bill login ID password, then you can use same login ID password for the purpose of the e-invoicing portal. So you don't require to generate the new password. You don't require to register the newly. You simply use the eBay bill password for the purpose of e-invoice portal. Now, second way, if you are not having the eBay bill password, that means you are the service provider and you have not yet registered for the purpose of eBay bill portal. Then you have to create the login ID password. Then you can go for the registration and you create the login ID password on the e-invoice portal. Then third and most important method is choose methodology. What methodology your organization should opt for the purpose of the generation of e-invoicing. So if you see the methodologies available for generation of the e-invoicing or modes for the generation, first mode is offline bulk utility. So you may aware that or you are filing the GSTR1 or GSTR3B and government has given a utility for generation of the JSON file. So in similar way, for the purpose of e-invoicing, government has given the utility, one can say utility or the schema, which can be filled offline and you can create the JSON and upload it. So these facilities are available from the government side. Second, you can opt the mode of direct API integration, means your system can be integrated directly to the portal and you can automate the process of generation of the e-invoicing. But this is required, you can say software technical required for this, and this could be useful if you are having a number of numerous invoices, then direct API integration can be used. Third methodology is related to the API integration through GSP. So there are certain GSP Suvidha provider from which you can got the login ID password and then you can create through the GSP Suvidha provider. So there are three methodologies for the generation of the invoicing. Now, how you can going to choose the invoicing? So simple, there should be the cost benefit analysis before choosing the methodology. So we as an organization helping you to automate the e-invoicing or implement the e-invoicing and choose the best methodology for the purpose of your organization. So simply one example can be taken. If you are having only 3-4 as a service provider, 3-4 invoices, then you can use the government methodology or government tool, which is given offline for generation of the JSON, and you upload like GSTR1. But please note that GSTR1 is monthly process and e-invoicing going to be the daily or real-time process. Whenever you generate the e-invoicing, you have to report it to the government portal and then you get the QR code. So this is somehow hectic if you are having a numerous invoices. So you could require to integrate or you could require to use the technology for the ease of transaction or for smoothing your transaction or daily work. And hence we are saying that the e-invoicing is a technology change. And thus, as an organization, you should choose first what could be the mode of generation or what could the mode is suitable for your organization. And accordingly, you should start implementation of the e-invoicing. Then once you got that this mode is, you had chosen this mode of implementation, then use the sandbox testing. So government has provided the sandbox testing before application. So from 1st January, e-invoicing is going to be applicable. Before that, you can use the sandbox testing for generation of the e-invoicing. So for that, that is a testing tool which is available online. You can test that and use that tool so that in earlier stage itself, you got the challenges which you are going to be faced in days to come, and you can address that challenges at this stage only during implementation. So use sandbox testing and then you generate the e-invoicing and be prepared before 1st January itself. So this is the process. Now, if you see the schema or the utility of the government portal for generation of the e-invoicing, then there are certain, in the schema, there are certain mandatory particulars. So you know that if there is a red mark, then that is a mandatory particular and you require to give that details. And there are certain optional parameters, that is that details can be given or cannot be given. So what are the mandatory parameters? So some of the mandatory parameters are name of the supplier. So QR code contains the name of the supplier, GSTN of the supplier, address, name of the buyer, total tax amount, quantity. These are some of the mandatory parameters. Similarly, there are certain optional parameters given in the schema, which are contact number, project reference, vendor. These parameters you could give or not, it's up to you. And these are the optional. But keep in mind a very important thing, whenever you are choosing the invoice number, don't choose the 001. So don't start with the 0, because now you are going to report that invoice to the online portal and system does not read the language of 00. So for the purpose of system, 001 is same as 1. So it can't read the 001. It can be 100, but 001 can't read by the system, and hence you should not use 0 before the starting the number, which you may earlier using, but now stop that using the 0 before the number. So this is the very important thing, that system don't read that. Then e-invoicing schema. If you refer the e-invoicing schema, so e-invoicing schema made available earlier, if anyone has used that, there are certain changes in the e-invoicing schema on the basis of the challenges faced by the taxpayer. Some of the key changes are, if you refer the earlier e-invoicing schema, discount was given at item level, but now discount is at invoice level. So there is a discount column, but that is now required to be given on invoice level. Second, other charges parameter earlier was given at item level, but now it is at invoice level. So these are the some changes. For example, export duty, additional information is now available to the schema. So whenever you are implementing the e-invoicing and you got any of the challenges during implementation, then government is addressing that challenges at this stage itself. Like we had discussed about the schema changes. So government is changing the schema accordingly. So start implementation and report if any of the problem or any of the challenges you are facing. Please inform to us or please inform to trade chambers, some of the trade chambers, so that we can represent that to the government and we can get it sorted out at this stage only. So government is proactively looking after our queries and giving us the solution for that. Now, if you are required to generate the e-invoicing, what is the process? So friends, e-invoicing is not a different invoice. First, keep in mind. So it's a tax invoice only. So for the purpose of generation of the e-invoicing, whatever other process you are following is the same. Only the additional process of reporting the tax invoice to the government portal is get added. So you have to prepare the tax invoice as it is. So process first, you require the PO. So purchase order once you get. So whatever the process as an organization you are following till now or regularly should be followed. You generate your tax invoice as usual. As now you are generating, you generate your tax usual as usual. And after generation of the tax invoice, you have to create the JSON file and you have to upload that on the online portal by way of login ID. Once it is uploaded to the online portal, you get the QR code. That QR code looks like this. I will show. So this one is the digital sign invoice. So once you report your tax invoice to the government online portal, that gives you a QR code or the digital sign invoice. That QR code or barcode you have to print on your tax invoice. So your tax invoice is not going to change. Only one parameter is going to be added on the tax invoice, which is QR code, and which is generated by reporting your tax invoice details to the government portal. So this is one additional parameter is going to be added, and no other new process or is going to be changed. Or as far as tax invoice is concerned, tax invoice is going to be same as earlier, only with new one parameters of QR code. So if you refer this flow of the transaction, so as a supplier, you have to create the tax invoice. Once your tax invoice is created, your tax invoice details are going to be reported to IRP, means the invoice registration portal. So e-invoice portal, you have to give the details of the tax invoice. Once IRP receive your tax invoice details, they give you an IRN number with QR code. So this is the format, or this is the e-invoicing, digital sign invoicing you will receive from the IRP or the invoice portal. Once you get that IRP, just print that or download that and print the QR code of that e-invoice on your tax invoice. So print QR code on your tax invoice and you can send that tax invoice for the movement of the goods. Second, IRP send the data to the GST system. So from the once it reported to the IRP, there is one tab wherein e-way bill is also generated. So from IRP, e-way bill can be generated automatically by using that tab. So you are not required to register separate, or you are not required to go to the e-way bill portal separately and then you generate the e-way bill. So from IRP itself, there is a tab and you can generate the e-way bill simultaneously. Second, that data goes to the GST system. So once that data, whatever the invoice reported, is going to be auto-populated in the GST system. In GST system, they will update the GSTR1. So your GSTR1 now going to be updated automatically once you report the e-invoicing. Definitely at the time of before filing of GSTR1, you can change and check the same, but at least that are going to be auto-populated in GSTR1. And nowadays, as per the news report, that auto population of data has already started for the taxpayer who has implemented the e-invoicing from 1st October. Then from GST system that goes to the buyer. So this data once auto-populated in the GSTR1, then that also auto-populated in the GSTR2A of the buyer. So whatever your supplier, even though from your vendor, you will get the 2A on real time, whatever the invoice is uploaded. Second, there is a one app given for the by using that app. So if you go to the online portal has provided one app for scanning the QR code. This app can be used by anyone, even I can as a tax profession use that app, and if I receive any invoice with QR code, I can scan that invoice and I can get the details of invoice from the QR code. Now, what are the details QR code contains? If you scan the QR code, then that QR code is having an IRN invoice reference number, which is a 64-digit number. And that 64-digit number contains the digit or what are the numbers that contains the GSTN of the supplier, that contains the GSTN of the recipient. Then second, that contains the invoice number, date of generation, invoice value, number, HSN code, and unique reference or hash function. So these are the parameters which are contained in the QR code. Second key aspects, whenever you are printing your QR code on your tax invoice, just keep in mind that there is no restriction that on which or where you have to print that QR code. But it should be on any of the part of the face of the invoice. So it should be on tax invoice on any part. It's not like that there is a specific part. So you can print QR code or you can place QR code anywhere on the tax invoice. Second, QR code is an IRN or QR code contains the IRN. IRN is the 64 based encoded number and QR contains the IRN base 64 encoded, but it's an unencrypted QR code. Then IRN. So what is the compulsory? Tax invoice should contain the QR code. Whether you want to print the IRN on the tax invoice, that is invoice reference number, it is up to you. So it is an optional. If you require, you can print IRN number also on the invoice. If you don't require, you can't. You may not print. Whenever you scan the QR code, you get the IRN. So QR code only the compulsory to print on the invoice or tax invoice. Then some of the other key aspects. So we had seen the applicability, we had seen the modes of generation, we had seen the which transactions are covered. Now there are some queries or questions or the other key aspects which you should be aware about the e-invoicing. First, if you reported the wrong data, what would be happen? If there is a mismatch between the tax invoice and whatever the reported, so inadvertently you had reported the wrong data on the e-invoicing portal, then what is the consequences? Whether you can edit or modify that e-invoicing once you generated the IRN. So once you generated the IRN, please keep in mind that the e-invoicing cannot be edited or modified. You can cancel that e-invoicing within 24 hours. So cancellation is allowed and that also within 24 hours. So if any mistake, you have to cancel that e-invoice within 24 hours. Now let's say again second step, after generation of the e-invoicing, you had also generated the e-way bill, and after generation of the e-way bill, you got to know that some of the parameters reported are inadvertently wrongly reported, and you have to correct that. So once e-way bill generated, please note that the e-invoicing can't be cancelled. You have to cancel first e-way bill and then only e-invoicing. And again, e-way bill is to be cancelled within 24 hours. So the flow will be, whenever you are generating the e-invoicing, the flow will be tax invoice, e-invoice, and then e-way bill. But whenever you are cancelling the e-way bill or e-invoicing, then flow will be the e-way bill, e-invoicing, and then tax invoice. So there is almost opposite flow. Second important thing is that once you are cancelled the IRN, For that tax invoice, you can't generate the another IRN. So for one invoice number, you can't generate the another IRN number, even though you had canceled that IRN number. So by default, you have to cancel the tax invoice also, and you have to generate the new invoice, and you have to generate the new IRN or new e-invoicing and new e-way bill. So please keep in mind the related procedure related to cancellation. So this is the cancellation. Second, many of viewers may not aware about the sub-user functionality. It is a useful functionality available. This functionality is also available for the e-way bill portal, and this is also made available to the e-invoicing portal. So what is the sub-user functionality? In case of this can be used whenever your company having the multiple place of business in the one state or operating from the multiple. So if you are moving the goods from multiple business and you require to generate the e-invoicing or e-way bill from multiple computers or from the multiple places, then this functionality can be used. So in this functionality, one is the user. So one is the main user. Let's say I am the main user. So you can create the main user. Main user has the complete access of the whole system, that is whole tab. You can generate the invoicing, you can cancel the invoicing, or you can generate the report, etc. So all tabs are available, but the main user can create the sub user. So I can create the many sub users. Let's say I had allotted to one person, that one person only can generate the e-invoicing related to the that movement or that goods. One person can only cancel the e-invoicing, and other person, so that person will be had access, limited access of that tab only. So as a main user, you can create the sub user. And if you see the FAQ, you can create the 10 sub user for one principal place of business. So if you are having a 4 place of business, then you can create the 40 sub users. So one place of business, 10 sub users are allowed. So this facility can be used for the purpose of easy creation of the e-way bill, and you can allot the functionality to your team accordingly, and which can also lead to the checking or internal control of checking of the transaction twice. So this functionality is very useful, and many of not aware about this online functionality. So please you can use that functionality. Second, friends, this is about the main part of the e-invoicing. Then we are going to discuss certain FAQs. So we had received some of the questions also related to the e-invoicing during registration. So during registration, we have received some questions. We are going to take that questions. So first question received was will the separate invoice format required for trader, medical, shop, professional, etc. So there is no separate format for the service provider and the trader or the manufacturer or the wholesaler. Please note that the e-invoicing is applied to the supplier. So if you are a supplier of the service provider, if you are a supplier of the trading in the goods or etc., the e-invoicing is similar. So you have to prepare the tax invoice, you have to report that tax invoice to online portal, get the QR code, print that QR code on your tax invoice. So earlier tax invoice format is not going to change, that format will remain same, only the one parameter of QR code is going to be added in the tax invoice, and you can send that tax invoice to your vendor or to your supplier. With the supply at the time of the movement of the goods. Second question we had received regarding the will it be possible to add the transporter details as well. So friends, e-invoicing does not contain the transporter details. If you have to add the transporter detail in the e-way bill itself. So from e-invoicing portal, you generate the e-way bill by tab, and in the e-way bill itself, you have to add the transporter details. So all other parameters are going to be auto-populated in the e-way bill, but in addition to that, you have to add the transporter details in the e-way bill. Then third questions we receive regarding with the introduction of e-invoicing, what are the documents required? So if e-invoicing is introduced for your or if applicable with your company, then for the purpose of movement of the goods or supply of the services, document required is tax invoice with QR code, that is the tax invoice with valid e-invoice, and second is e-way bill. So e-way bill is still now applicable. It is not done away, because in days to come e-way bill may not be applicable, but nowadays e-way bill is applicable. So tax invoice with QR code along with e-way bill is required for the movement of the goods. Could be e-way bill could be removed, or e-way bill functionality could be removed afterwards whenever the e-invoicing is applicable to all taxpayer and all taxpayer used to the e-invoicing. Then government is planning to remove the e-way bill also regarding the e-way bill requirement of the e-way bill, but that would require the time. So in that time, for the purpose of movement of the goods and the supply of the services, you should carry the tax invoice with QR code along with the e-way bill. Then what invoice is applicable to high-seas sale? So regarding high-seas sale, one question was received, whether e-invoicing is applicable to high-seas sale. So friends, high-seas sale is the Schedule 3 transaction. So it is now getting covered under the Schedule 3. Schedule 3 transactions are neither supply of the goods nor supply of the services. So high-seas sale, GST itself is not applicable, and hence in our view, for the high-seas sale, it is not required to generate the e-invoice. So this is above view. Then these are some of the FAQ. Other questions we are going to discuss one to one. Now related to the challenges. So if you are going to implement e-invoicing, you may face some of the challenges. And what are that challenges? So if you see, many of the consultant has discussing the challenges regarding the if there is no electricity, no internet, ERP down. So definitely these are the challenges, and these are the critical challenges. But the challenges are already communicated to the government, and government has said that the state level notification would be issued or clarification would be issued in this regard, what can be done in such a scenario. So this is already discussed with the government. But there are certain other challenges which many of the taxpayers are not looking of. And what are that challenges? So there can be some challenges from the supplier point of view and from the recipient point of view. So first discuss about the supplier. So as a supplier, what are the challenges for you? So definitely one more compliance is going to be added, and that compliance would be the hectic, because this compliance is now real time and daily compliance. We are nowadays, very much stuck off in the GSTR1 3B, and that is a monthly compliance. Even we are facing many challenges, many team challenges, organization challenges to comply that on time. Now this is the real time compliance, and definitely this will add to your one can say that the manpower cost to your organization if it is not implemented in proper way. Second compliance is related to the reconciliation. So even in GSTR 99C, you say that the many reconciliations are asking. But nowadays, during the departmental audit, there is a possibility that the authorities could ask some reconciliation related to the e-invoicing. Means they may ask the e-invoicing reconciliation with the e-way bill. Means you had generated the invoicing, but you had not generated the e-way bill, or you subsequently cancelled the e-invoicing. What was the reason for cancellation? What is the reconciliation of the e-invoices and IRN generated? What is the reconciliation of the GSTR1 you had reported and you had e-invoicing you had generated? So such a reconciliations could be asked by the authorities during the departmental audit, and hence at this stage only, whenever you are cancelling the invoicing, whenever you are cancelling the e-way bill, start capturing the rationale of cancellation and start reconciling the data on real-time basis, so that afterwards it not be hectic or you can get it easily. So these are the some challenges as from supplier perspective. But as a recipient, what are the challenges for me? Whenever I am receiving any goods or services, I have to track. Whenever I am a recipient of the goods, I have to track whether I have received the tax invoice for the from the supplier who are below 100 crore. From the vendor who are below 100 crore. Whether I had received the e-way bill if my value of the goods is below above 50 or 1 lakh, whichever applicable. Whether I had received the tax invoice with QR code if my vendor is exceeded 100 crore. So I have to track which type of vendor I am having and which type of invoice I had received, whether I had received or e-way bill or not. If I am a recipient of the service, even for the service, I have to track whether I had received proper tax invoice, proper bill of supply, proper invoice, tax invoice with aggregate turnover 100 crore, etc. I have to track. So friend, even as a recipient, we suggest, if your company is a big company and you can track the record, or you can track the record separately for the uh, uh, tax invoice with QR code and tax invoice without QR code in the system itself, it is very much beneficial for the departmental audit. So if you are a bigger company, start tracking the such a transaction, so that afterwards it would be easy for you that how many purchases are from the vendor who are having the turnover above 100 crore. And one way you can at least substantiate the fact that you had taken all due care that your vendor is giving you a proper e-invoicing or tax invoice, and you are possession with the proper tax invoice. Second, as a recipient of the as a recipient, you should start initiate discussion with vendor from now only, that whether your company is 100 above 100 crore and e-invoicing is applicable to you. And if e-invoicing is applicable, whether you had prepared for the invoicing, and from 1st January you are going to issue the e-invoicing in such a. So start communicating with your vendor now only, because very few days are remain. Second, capture. So you change your agreement maybe on 1st April, even though you have to change, or some of the agreements could be renewal on 1st January. So change your agreement or agreement clause to capture properly that the if supplier or if your vendor has not issued the proper invoice or the invoice with QR code, then what are the consequences and who is the responsible. So capture that in your agreement with the vendor or in purchase order. So it is very essential steps which can be taken during the implementation of the e-invoicing. So it's applicable to all recipient even though your turnover is below 100 crore. So as discussed, as a recipient, if you are a big company, then you can make system level challenge, system level change, or in the system itself change that the your tax invoice should be captured separately, whoever issuing with the QR code. So there should be that report that these many tax invoices are with the QR code. So this is about some of the challenges and how you can address the challenges. Now regarding the implementation. So friends, I have already discussed that the for some of the taxpayer, maybe it's a process change, that is only you have to report to the online portal, and you have to get the QR code and you have to print that QR code on the tax invoice. So for some of the taxpayers, service provider, it could be only the process change. But for many of the taxpayer, you can say 90% of, for the 90% taxpayer, it's a technology change. So you have to automate your system to get the e-invoicing. Else you will stuck off with generating of the invoicing. Your team will made many mistakes while generating of the e-invoicing, and you could cost more if you generate the wrong e-invoicing. So thus it's a technological change. You have to automate the process. We as a firm helping you to automate in Tally, ERP, etc. also. So you have to start implementation, how you can automate that process and how you can generate e-invoicing, tax invoice with QR code automatically. This will help you in days to come. So more than process change, one can say it is a technology change, and you have to be prepared for the technology. Government is very fast moving towards the technology. So you are aware that the government has implemented faceless transaction in the direct tax. Government has as a India, e-invoicing has implemented even within a few months, that is within a period of 6 months they had implemented the e-invoicing. Second, they are now 26 years as going to be reflected, or your GST returns data is reflecting in the 26 years. So government has moving towards the technology in fast phase. So you should also be move in that phase with the technology and automate your processes, automate your GST return, so that you can at least in days to come focus on your businesses. So there could be the one-time cost, but that is very useful for your organization, because it would help your businesses to grow in days to come, and you remove from all these compliances manually. So it's manually mistakes are also happening in very fast pace. So this is the related to so before implementation, thus or preparedness before implementation, as per our view, very few days left. Is our tendency is that there could be extension, but don't wait for the extension, because as far as first experience related to the 1st October, everyone was waiting for the extension, but government has not extended the 1st October date for the 500 crores. So now don't wait for the extension. Start implementation thinking that the 1st January is the implementation date for your company. Then during implementation, during standard testing, if you had come across any concern like your goods or HSN code is not there, or your goods, let's say your schema that does not contain the unit that you, so liter unit, the schema does not contain that parameter you want to report. So such a changes can be done at this level, and whenever there's such a challenges during sandbox testing, you come across such a challenges during sandbox testing, then you can let us know. We will inform it to the government authorities, or we will represent before government authorities, and also you can represent by way of query also. So you can raise the grievance, etc., and you can raise the query before the government authority, and definitely government will be helping in this regard to provide you the solution before implementation itself. Then friends, internal team training is required. So as a company, you should your procurement team should be aware about the e-invoicing. Why? Because they are procuring and receiving the e-invoicing. So they should know that the from the vendor above 100 crore, they should receive the tax invoice with QR code. What is the QR code? So your procurement team should be aware about, your sale team should be aware about the provisions, your accounting team should be aware, logistic. So as an organization or as a company, your complete team should be aware about this big change of technology change, including your software team should be aware, and hence within the company, you can arrange the internal training for the e-invoicing. So we are more than happy to provide the team training also for your company. So this is about the implementation of the